Okay, so let's talk about a formula for the circumference. So in the activity, right, we discovered that the ratio of the circumference to the diameter was equal to the number pi. How does this give us a formula for the circumference? Well, pretty easy, right? Like we would just multiply both sides by the diameter, and there you go, right? So this tells us that the circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. And that's all there is to that. Now you may think, but that's not the formula that I learned for circumference. You might be thinking of like pi r squared for one thing, but that's completely wrong. Pi r squared is the area of a circle. That's not the same thing as the circumference, which is the distance around the circle, right? So the circumference is pi times diameter. However, you may have heard of that as 2 pi r. So instead of pi times d, you may have heard 2 pi r. Well, why 2 pi r? Well, another thing that we've discussed is that the diameter, or is that the radius is half of the diameter, right? Well, if the radius is half of the diameter, then the diameter is 2 times the radius, right? So, so we could replace d with 2r, right? The diameter is just 2 times the radius. And if you rearrange the letters there, right, that's just the same thing as 2 times pi times r, which is a formula that you might be a little bit more familiar with, okay? But either one of these will work. They're really expressing the same idea, that the circumference of a circle is just its diameter times this constant, right? Where, you know, it's about 3.14, right? Pi is about 3.14. It's actually an irrational number that goes on and on and on forever. Mathematicians have been enamored with the number pi for literally millennia. I'm not that kind of mathematician. I think pi is interesting, and I think it comes up in interesting places, but I'm not the kind of person who's going to sit around and memorize digits of pi. It's just, I have better things to do with my time, I guess. But anyway, but that's that. So that's how we compute the circumference of a circle. So let's work on a couple examples. I'm going to use the same lid that I used yesterday because it's here handy, so that I don't have to freehand draw a circle. Let's say that we had a circle. Oh, see, I can't even trace a circle. I can't even trace a circle very well. But anyway, there you go. So we've got this circle, and let's say that the diameter of the circle is, so remember the diameter has to go through the center of the circle. So let's say that the diameter of the circle is 7 inches. Obviously, this figure is not drawn. It's not. This is not 7 inches long, but let's say that the diameter of that circle is 7 inches. Go ahead and pause the video, see if you can find the circumference. When you give me the circumference, give it to me in exact terms and give me a decimal approximation. Let's round to 2 decimal places on our approximations. So I'll let you do that. Here's my solution. So the circumference of this circle is pi times diameter. Okay, so that's, in this case, pi times 7, or in other words, we would just say 7 pi. So the circumference is 7 pi inches. That's my exact answer. Okay, so the circumference is exactly 7 pi inches. Now, if you want to know about how much that is, then you need to enter that into your calculator, right? So 7 pi, so we'll say 7 times pi is approximately 21.99. Okay, so that's about 21.99 inches. And again, note the use of equal signs here versus an approximation sign here. It's because the circumference is not equal to 21.99 inches. It's about 21.99 inches. Okay. That's that one. So I think circumference is pretty straightforward once you have the formula, but it was not at all obvious before we went through this activity, right? It was not at all obvious that this should be the circumference. In past math classes, you may have just been handed that formula and been told to take your teacher's word for it, that this is the circumference of a circle, but now you don't need to take my word for it. Now you know that this is true. You've been through the activity and you know that the ratio of the circumference to the diameter is going to be pi, right? So that's kind of nice. You know where this formula comes from now. And once you have the formula, applying it is really pretty straightforward. Let me just give you one more example. We'll do some more challenging examples in another video. Okay, but here's another example. This time, instead of giving you the diameter, let's say that I just gave you the radius. And for the sake of argument, let's also say that the radius here is 7 inches. Okay. So previously the radius was the diameter of 7 inches. Now the radius is 7 inches. Well, so what's the circumference of this circle? So I'll let you pause the video and give that a shot. Okay, now here's my solution. So the circumference here, I can still use pi times diameter. I just have to realize that what I'm given here is not the diameter, it's the radius. Okay, so if I want to find the circumference, then I need to double this in order to figure out what the diameter is, right? So if the radius is 7 inches, then the diameter should be 14 inches, right? So then I can say, okay, so the circumference should be 14 pi. Another way to do the exact same thing is to use the other version of the formula that we discussed, right? So since we were given the radius, we might want to use this formula that involves the radius instead of the diameter. So then we can say, you know, C is 2 pi r, and then we can just plug in 7 directly, right? We can say, all right, so C is 2 times pi times 7. 2 times 7 is, of course, 14. Okay, so pretty straightforward. So the circumference is 14 pi inches. How much is that? So 14 pi is about 43.98. So the circumference is about 43.98 inches. So it's exactly equal to 14 pi inches, and that's approximately 43.98 inches. And that's all there is to that.